We're recording.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 14th, 2025 Finance Subcommittee of the Brookline School Committee. We will start with our first item on the agenda, which is approval of the April 16th, 2025 Finance Subcommittee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Carolyn, I saw your hand. I'll take it as a second. Carolyn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Then we're going to defer acceptance of gifts and grants to a meeting that we're going to schedule next week. And Betsy, will you poll the 4 members and I guess Susan for that meeting?
Okay, sure.
Thanks. I'm hopeful that we can do it. My goal is to get a quorum of the committee, but maybe not all 4. And to schedule it Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week. So hopefully we'll get that. Next item on the agenda is approval of grant. Oh, go ahead, Carolyn.
So, just so we can talk about this here and not cumbersomely in email. So what can we expect for the days of gift in terms of background information, and likewise the Office of Educational Equity proposal, and when? Do you know? Does anybody know?
There was an email from Anthony earlier to you.
I saw that, but I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yep.
And I will say just quickly, I mean, I very quickly glanced through it, and part of it seemed to say like something about, I don't know if it was sort of implying, well, it's not really curriculum anyway, but what we, the one, sorry, I'm in a parking lot. The one thing we had received about it previously specifically said for curriculum development. So,
well, given that the agenda today didn't notice this conversation,
yeah,
and we're going to put it off till early next week. Why don't we
okay.
park these questions until next week and keep going?
Okay, but
And
my question is what we're going to get and when we can expect it. So it sounds like, I don't know.
know.
I can just say the information we had prepared to send it out for today, and we'll just send it out with the agenda. I think Betsy planned on doing that by Friday. That's my understanding. Once she can figure out what day we're meeting on. But what information A&F has is prepared to be shared.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is approval of grant applications. We have one grant application, which is to the state for a literacy program. And there was some information provided to us. Jody, one question that I had, which I'm sure you will know the answer to, is that on the next page, if you don't mind scrolling down, Betsy, there was 120,000 for the purchase of materials. And what I was not sure of is, are these materials budgeted? Is the $240,000 budgeted in next year's budget, and this would free up 120,000? Or I don't quite understand the timing or what this is covering.
Great question, Mariah. We have 178,000 budgeted in the budget next year. We're not sure that that'll be sufficient to cover a full curriculum for K-8, and this PRISM grant will pay for half of a curriculum. So we're estimating that 120,000 would be needed to fund the other half of that purchase.
So the 240 is for K-8, but they will fund, even if we are spending money on a more broad program, they will fund 50% of the total curriculum, not just the 6 through 8 portion?
Right. No, they'll fund just the 6 through 8 portion.
Okay, so the 178 is just for this grade 6 through 8 portion of curriculum.
Correct.
Okay, and then could you refresh my memory? Is fish tank only K through 5?
No, Fish Tank does go K-8. Our middle school teachers are evaluating a couple of different programs that they may wish to use that they prefer to Fish Tank. But right now, Fish Tank is the front runner.
Okay, but that hasn't been decided yet.
It has not been decided yet. TBD fairly soon.
Okay, Carolyn and Sarah, do you have other questions about this grant application?
I do, but Sarah, do you want to go first?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. And sorry, I need to bring this up. I thought I had everything on my laptop because I knew I was going to be in a parking lot. But I have one sec. So, just kind of generally, what can we get some context? I don't know what this is kind of at all. So Jody, are you able to just give like a bumper sticker?
Yeah, absolutely. So the state has these PRISM grants, and as you know, the committee funded our K-5 program completely, and we were moving into 6 through 8. This is an opportunity for the state to fund half of the purchase of the curriculum as well as all the professional development that goes along with it. Plus, we get state support for implementation.
And so how is Prism? So Prism is the title of I understand. Okay, now Mariah's question I think makes sense. So Prism is the title of the grant.
Correct.
We would use the funds for okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if Prism was yet another
I think it's the acronym Partnership Reading Success.
got it.
Yeah.
And I did have a question when I looked at this. Stipends for educators and or substitute coverage, $60,000. So with that figure and just sort of your knowledge, what's your sense of like how much time out of the classroom does that assume?
Actually, the reason that we have the funding in there is so that we're not pulling our teachers out of the classrooms. Teachers or substitutes is how the grant is written. Our aim is to do most of the PD after school or in the summer.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That really answers that question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay, Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jody, for coming to talk us through that.
My pleasure.
Next item on the agenda is review of the position control report. And I think this will be Susan talking to this. Is that right, Susan?
Yes. It's awful tiny, isn't it? Yeah, so since our last meeting, we have had to add another paraprofessional. We had mentioned this at a subsequent meeting, I don't remember which one. And so it's for the BEAT program, for a student in the BEAT program, and the funding source would be the BEAT revolving fund. The net cost would be the cost from now until the end of the year. Next year, of course, this would roll into our budget, and the cost is approximately $44,000. So again, when we talk about for next year reserve funds that we had set aside for sections, this would be an example of some of the reserve sections that we set aside. Also note that we increased that when, for some paraprofessionals when Dr. Schmuckler was reviewing the out-of-district tuition, and we made note that some additional resources would be used there. I moved that into the section reserve, so we have a few more dollars in that account, which is good because we've added 5 paras since the budget was submitted.
Susan, legally, given that this is an IEP mandated service, are we allowed to charge it to the revolving fund?
There's no reason we can't. It's a BEEP related expense.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's best practice, but we really have no choice because we don't have any money left in the budget for this year.
I see. And the $5,000 is essentially the fraction of the year that remains.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions from the subcommittee? Okay, thank you very much for sharing that information. Next item on the agenda is reconsideration of prior vote considering beep extended day fees. So I got an email. We've received several emails from the community, the beep community, about the fee increases for next year. And in one of my exchanges with a parent, it turned out that I got new information that we were originally told that the beep extended day costs currently $800 a month, but it actually costs $700 a month. And when we increased it to $1,000, we weren't increasing it by $200 from $800. We were increasing it by $300 from $700. So that was a typo in the original memo and the discussion that we had considered. And I think that the question in front of the subcommittee is whether to recommend to full school committee that we make an adjustment in our recommendation, given that change. And Susan, do you want to add anything before we take questions just about any of the financial impact of reducing the anticipated monthly charge from $1,000 to $900?
I don't believe so. Margaret, I believe when we prepared the budget, it was based on a percentage increase.
Right.
Right, yeah. So it shouldn't have any financial implications because we would have done it on the base of the correct number.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I may, Mariah, I'm so sorry about that incorrect memo. I think I was telling, before you came on, I was chatting with Betsy that I was so focused on the whole big program. I didn't think about that. I didn't see the actual 800 to 700 difference, but we have been charging 700 for this past year for the tuition. That's the tuition that we've been collecting. So if you're going to go with the vote of the $200 increase, and it doesn't align with like the 8% that it's a bigger increase in terms of like we increase 8% for the morning. But I think from 700 to 900 is even like a what, 30% or 20%? I'm not sure. I'm not the math person right at this time of day for that. So, but as Susan had explained to us at the meeting that we were at prior, it was to cover not just the cost of the salary, but the above the line or below the line costs of running that program.
Yep.
So,
and my recollection was from that conversation that we actually did not even begin to cover the above the line costs. We were approaching it, but it's still, even with that increase, we did not cover the above the line costs. So
I do think
clear, like that.
Yeah, I do think the salaries for the educators are like the salaries, but not the benefits and stuff, if that's what the
Right, I think we got very close, but maybe like a little bit below the salaries. That's my recollection. I could be off, but it was very close to the salaries themselves with the increase, and it did not actually cover any of the benefits, is my recollection.
With the move from 700 to 900?
That's my recollection, Susan. Is that yours? We could pull it up again, but yeah. That's my recollection.
For the salaries themselves, just the salaries?
That's my recollection. We can pull it up again in a minute, but I think there might be other questions from the subcommittee. So why don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that is the question I had raised my hand for, is just, I didn't know if we were approaching covering costs. And so I think that I don't need to know it exactly because I don't want to make that big of an increase in after school care. So I'd like to keep it with what you sort of had originally thought of. We're still going to be increasing again towards covering the cost of the program, right? That's still a part of the plan. So how much would after school care cost after this year? What would be the increase after this year?
Well, I think what you had voted, if my memory serves me, I'm sorry, I didn't go back and completely immerse myself in in all the material from our prior meeting. But the idea was that this particular program, we would try to raise the tuitions over time to be able to cover those expenses. What Margaret and I had, I think, proposed was that we do it through a combination of reducing the number of financial assistance slots, so we wouldn't have to necessarily increase the total fee. But I think in the end, we settled on a percentage for each year, the same percentage increase for each year. That's my recollection, in service to getting the tuition up to cover the total cost of the program, which of course increases a bit each year. But this change, this was just a typo when we presented it. It will have no bearing on, it'll have huge impact on families in a positive way, but it won't impact us financially in a negative way from what we had originally anticipated we'd receive for revenue. So is that helpful?
We're only
see.
talking about the extended day piece here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the document from last time. So what I had forgotten was that benefits were almost as big as salaries.
Yeah.
So when you do this math out, if you take just the 196,000, divide it
Yep.
by the 30,
Yep.
and then that's about 6,500 per student, which is
Right.
$650-ish a month. So the 700 currently actually does cover the salary, to your point, Margaret.
Yeah.
But really the benefits are almost an equivalent cost. So again, we come nowhere near covering the benefits, but we slightly go past we would collect slightly more than
Right.
we are now.
Right. I'm just gonna do a little bit of math in my head here.
So if we were gonna collect $900 a month, I'm doing this math quickly, but I think we would collect $270,000.
Yeah, 270, that's correct.
And
For
that would,
15
so it would
students.
still be $100,000 off the total program. It would be about a collection of
Right.
roughly 75% of program costs.
Right.
So that's the rough math here.
Right. And I think that we'll, at some point, we'll have to think, we'll have the program for next year and hopefully it will be successful as it has been for this year. But think long term whether or not the costs are too prohibitive in general for the district or for the parents.
Carolyn?
Thanks. Yeah, so that's what Margaret just spoke to is exactly what I'm thinking about and wanted to ask about. So, I mean, we're talking about, we made a one-time adjustment. Now we're readjusting that adjustment. And I think it would be really important for us to have some longer-term projections in terms of sustainability of this program at this cost.
Are you talking
Especially
about the
since we
extended day program, Carolyn, or the day program, or both?
I'm talking about the extended day program. I mean, I suppose I'm talking about both, but I'm only talking about the extended day because that's what we're talking about specifically now. And yeah, I mean, it's rather than sort of coming back year after year and having it be stressful, I think it would be great to sort of flag the wisdom of projecting out, especially because, and I don't remember what was left after we used it, but especially because we did dig, I think, fairly deeply into the BEEP reserve fund this year. So sort of all told, I'm just kind of flagging that as a wish to look
But
at
to
it that
clarify,
way.
it's a revolving fund, not a reserve fund. Just in
Sorry,
case
thank
any
you.
of the casual listeners think that there's
Thank
another
you.
reserve fund, yeah.
Okay. I guess, yes, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it in the way that we used it. And then forgive me for, so Margaret, when we're looking at separate benefits for
Mhm.
this program versus the full BEEP program, is it a separate set of staff?
Yeah, so it's just 4 people. It's 4 people.
And sorry, can we see the memo again? So, okay, sorry, this is just gonna show my lack of knowledge here.
Okay.
So why, when we say, what are the benefits?
I think it's just like health insurance and other things. I don't
But
know.
is that not part of their regular BEEP compensation? Why is there $180,000 worth of benefits separate for the extended day program?
I think that would be the case for every person who has benefits, like that is a unit whatever, or not, like you have benefits, there's a cost to that. That costs the school district,
I
right?
understand that. Thank you. What I mean is if these are the same individuals who are your regular
They're
teachers.
not, they're
Oh,
not.
they're
Oh,
four
okay.
different people.
They're
Yeah,
four
they're four
different-
different people.
okay.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't understand your question.
And and how many hours are they working?
They working from 10:30 in the morning till 5:30 at night, and they're bridging
Oh.
that time in the morning to that when we for the schedule of the day. That's what they've been doing. And certainly moving forward, Carolyn, to your point, we could change that model moving forward.
So
Like the
from
number of hours
10:30 to this, what time does the extended day program
it
begin?
starts at 2:30.
So there's 4 hours that they are working for
Mhm.
regular
That's
beep.
correct.
So
Are.
they're both.
They're right. And they're doing, covering, being in the classroom. It's actually been a really successful program because they're very integrated into the program this year.
Yep.
And there's a very smooth transition to the extended day part of the day.
But the benefits are charged to the
That's right.
extended day.
That's right. Yeah.
But, and then, sorry, just one more thing, from an accounting perspective, is extended day sort of like a separate account within BEEP, Susan? Thank you.
Mhm. I think it's part of SE20. Susan, I don't want to speak for
I
you.
see Susan's head moving.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, if we were to reduce it by $100 a month, that's $1,000 less that the parents of the impacted students, the adults of the impacted students would pay.
Right. Yeah, and I would love, and I can say this to the finance subcommittee, and you can bring it to the Fuller School Committee, to Carolyn's point, to Dr. Given's point, like a real look and thinking about the program in general, moving forward, the vision as we move more into like when we have classrooms at the piers, the spaces that we have. I've talked about this a couple of times to really have like an in-depth look. You and I talked about it, Mariah, when we had Clark really a lifetime ago, and really plan and strategically think forward about the program so that it is sustainable and manageable for the district and doesn't cause any structural issues, and also doesn't bear too much of a burden on the parents that wish to participate as well.
I think it'll be a great conversation because I think your vision for it was really instrumental in the lead up to the override to talk about. While we ended up not having a BEEP portion to the override, it helped all of us get on the same page about where we wanted BEEP to be within the district as a whole. And so I think it would be valuable, as you say, now that we have questions of cost, now that we're thinking about the leases, the placement, all of these things, it would be great to get that update.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I would like to say to your question, Mariah, before you were asked Dr. Givens about the one-to-one and charging it to the revolving fund, I think Dr. Givens sort of stated this already. Usually a one-to-one would not be charged to the revolving fund, right? Because it's part of the IEP. But one of the things that we have been talking about is like, to Carolyn's point or Member Dahl's point, we're using some of the revolving fund for covering the costs overall, and you can charge those things because they're special ed early childhood costs to the revolving fund, and that sort of gaps. I think moving forward, that cost would be part of special ed, and it would revert back to that piece of the funding for the program. Yeah.
And that's true. So in FY26,
Yeah.
the cost comes out of special education, not the BEEP revolving fund. It's only because we're in this predicament we're in this year that this is where it's being funded.
Yeah, and Dr. Given and I have met several times to think about how she's been doing that so that we are carefully considering all of those needs. So, and I appreciate all of your support and really look forward to a more in-depth conversation so we can be structurally and programmatically sound moving forward.
So,
but I don't know if we actually answered your question.
You did. I think I have a different question now, which is, Susan, when you did the calculations, you said you did them on a percentage increase. So
no, I was mixing it up with the last with the BEEP
Morning.
portion.
the day program.
Yeah, Margaret's right. I was confusing myself there.
Okay, so did you actually do the calculations based on $200 or did you do them on?
No, yeah, it went 200, 200, and 200. It wasn't a percentage.
Okay, in that case, I'm gonna make a motion for the committee to recommend to the full school committee that it amend its prior vote to $900 a month instead of $1,000 a month.
And
Or I'll say 200, I'm gonna frame this a little bit differently because it's a 3-year vote. $200 a month increase over the next per year over the next 3 years, because the current rate is $700.
second that?
Okay. Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Margaret, is that something that you can notify the
Yes,
adults of
course.
so that they're aware of that change?
I absolutely can do that tomorrow. First thing, I will send out a notice to everybody
I think
about
they'll
the
be,
vote today. Oh, I'll wait for your official vote at school committee, but
okay,
I'll wait for that. I don't
okay,
want, I
Just
don't
in
want to
case.
cause any chaos and
Yeah, just in case, that's
already
great, but
caused
I think
enough.
it'll be they'll be pleased to know.
Yeah, and I
what they're
appreciate,
doing.
again, I apologize for the mix up and I appreciate your consideration and all the support that you've given the program this year. It's been very wonderful and I really appreciate it a lot.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Okay, next up is FY25 Q3 budget report. Susan.
Hey. Doesn't matter. Yeah, that one's fine. So one of the things you'll see is different about this quarter than the last is that the salary projections are included in the encumbrance for each. We're still doing some adjusting here. And so in some cases, we're still trying to align account codes with the new accounting design that we have. A lot of it has been cleaned up, but I can still see, some traces where we need to go back and make some further adjustments so that, again, as we print our reports, it aligns with the format and the accounting line items that you see in the budget. So, but we've made a lot of progress, and I thank the finance team for all their work this year making this alignment. So the real story. So you can look categorically, we're up, we're down in different areas, a variety of reasons. Some of them, again, are just simply because costs are not lining up with where some of the expenses are. So the budget includes this, but the expense is not lining up with the same account code. So I'm going to focus on the last section, which is really where it shows the roll up of all the cost centers. And we'll see next year, as we get this tighter, then we can provide some more detail even in this report. Of course, you remember last year you just had, one table. And I'm trying to get us to transition to a more meaningful report. And so next year, with some of these adjustments being made and better alignment with the accounting system and the codes, we should be able to provide that without making it just completely confusing. Okay, so overall, on the salaries, we're in better shape, but we're still overspent. It isn't a typo that we're projecting that on the salary side, we're overspent by $1.6 million. And on the expense, $1,006,712. Just happened to be that way. But some of the reasons for the improvement are because of some of the breakage. Also, with the reduction of some positions and or people leaving, we have not filled positions intentionally that weren't absolutely critical. So that we could accumulate more breakage to cover the overage that we identified early in the year. And again, it was primarily 3 components to that. One was extra compensation, which we've talked about quite a bit. And the second one was the grants that we had 13 staff members that were on grants that then came off the grants and had to be funded out of our operating budget. So we had to, stop hiring in other areas to pay for those staff. And that was predominantly why, but also some of these new positions that we added. as you know, more recently this spring, I've been assigning new positions to some of these revolving funds because we don't have money in the salary accounts really to pay for additional staff. I have not moved any money off and into the grants. I'm going to wait until the end of the year and then move that the expense over kind of categorically, so that I can keep an eye on them all in one place without breaking them out and having people being showing up in different places. So for simplicity, I'm waiting till the end of the year, and then I will make an adjusting entry to move the expense over to the revolving funds, as I've mentioned previously. On the expense side, again, we've had a budget freeze since January, except for essential supplies and services. Another I would say glorious development is that Karen has come on board and has been doing a tremendous amount of work cleaning up encumbrances and refining what our needs are in the OSS area. And so a lot of work has been done between the OSS office and the finance office, getting people recorded and funded through the proper accounts, and then right-sizing POs so that we're not carrying more money than we need for the year. So thank you, Karen. She's not here, but I just have to say thank you to her and Diane and Donna in particular, who have spent a lot of time trying to do a lot of work in that area. Also, we transferred about $700,000 out of Office of Administration and Finance, the Superintendent's Office, OEE, and OTL over to Student Services to help with their budget gap. But of course, that means that there were things that we weren't able to do this year that we had all hoped to be able to do. In the end, right now, it's looking like our total deficit for the year is about $2 million. So better than what we had in the last quarterly report, but certainly not what we would like to see. Some of the expenses, again, that we have in this year roll into next year as part of the structural deficit, and that's 100% of what those costs are. So the example I used earlier was that it's going to cost us $5,000 for one staff member to complete this year, but that's $44,000 next year. So the structural deficit that hits next year can be higher than what we're seeing here. So that's good, that's good news. And like I said, we will have to make these adjustments on the expense side in order to make a issue of a requisition, which turns to a PO. We have to have money, so I will likely be expending directly out of some of these revolving funds in the next month. So we'll give you another updated report in June, so that we'll have a better sense of how that played out. And we'll see what the impact will be on the revolving fund balances as we get closer to the end of the year. The next, any questions about that?
I have questions.
Sure.
So can you just help me roll back time to January of 2025, and we were looking at the Q2 report, and the Q2 report said, I was just looking at it, that we were negative $1 million, just under $1 million on salary, but net positive by $2 million on expense. And then we took a vote to move some amount from the BEEP revolving fund and some amount from something else. Sorry, can you just refresh our memory? How is this better, and how does it compare to Q2 report?
Sure. So Q2, we didn't take any. I didn't ask you to take any votes to move any money at that time. I just shared with you at that time how we and how we were going to close the gap for this year by using those balances.
Okay, sorry, we didn't vote, but you told
No,
us.
no. But we shared what our plan was. That was so that was after the Q2 report. There was a report that we shared with you that got into a deeper dive, and we can actually do this next week so you can see those same accounts so we can track. I'm happy to, if we're going to have a meeting next week, provide you with kind of the parallel from that time. Happy to do that. But like I said, if your question is, what changed between then and now?
I guess my question is, if I recall correctly, I'm trying to understand how if we're negative net 2 million, let me ask this a different way. What is your plan to close the deficit shown here?
To use the fund balances in the BEEP revolving fund and in the material fee revolving fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you now need to use less of them than you originally thought?
Yes.
By how much?
I think it was at the time it was 1.5 million out of BEEP and 700,000 out of I'm going off the top of my head, Mariah, but I'm pretty sure those were the numbers. So that would
Sorry, I think wasn't it 1.2 and 7?
maybe I'd have to go back to yeah, something like that. So we're about I guess similar. I'd have to go back to that memo. I might be able to pull it up.
I think it would be helpful, if you don't mind, to just like get the update. So, because I'm having trouble following the bouncing ball, and maybe for everyone who's listening's continuity's sake, if we could just get an update on what the original plan was to close this year and what the subsequent revised plan is based on Q3.
Yeah. Why don't I for next week? I'll bring up that and I'll show you it in the same way to make it easier to track.
Thank you. That would
Yeah,
be
no
helpful.
problem. No problem. So on the
Questions from the subcommittee on this portion before we move ahead? Can I ask one question, which is, at the time, I thought that we were gonna have, that Diane had said, if I recall in the last one, when we were $2 million up on non-salary expenses, that most of the encumbrances were in at that point. So how did we go from 2.3 positive to -1 if most of them were in?
settlements,
$3.3 million in settlements?
quite a lot of it came through in settlements and making some adjustments. But I'll give you the details so you can see it more clearly at a more granular level than this.
For next week.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions from the subcommittee before I presume we'll go on to the special revenue funds?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, Carolyn? Okay, go ahead, Susan.
Okay. All right. And this one's tiny. Betsy, if you can make it just a tiny bit bigger. Great, thank you. So these are organized by federal grants, state grants, private grants, and then revolving funds, just to remind everyone. In the first category of the federal grants and at the state, they cross multiple years. So grant years are frequently, September 1 to August 31st, which crosses fiscal years. And also the grants you're allowed to spend over the course of I think it's 24 months. So it can actually cross 3 fiscal years. So that's why you'll see here 23, 24, 25. 22, we've closed out. And so that one was just, hung over from the prior Title IIA grant cycle. So what this is really telling us is that in general, it looks like we're pretty much on track with spending our federal grants for prior fiscal years. So 22, 23, and 24. 25 as well, we've done a much better job really managing the grants this year so that the expenses are hitting the proper accounts for one, and that we're getting our requests for reimbursement in timely. And then when we have modifications, the modifications are done timely, so that there's a much higher level of management occurring in our special revenue fund area. So I'm pleased about that. The Title I, so I'm just going to give you a couple of little things that, when I look at it, I say, in 23, are we going to spend that 4,321? And what is that for this late in the year? I would expect that to be 0. And in that case, it's the Mass Teachers Retirement. There's a contribution that they take, that it isn't an expense against our line, that they will make the adjustment at the state level. But that is a fully expended grant at this point in time. When we go under, and 24 is tracking to be expended by the end of the grant cycle this year. And Title I also may be done by September. So that's really great news. That means we're timely. These should line up by your fiscal year in general, because it's part of your spending plan. And so the 25 was part of the 25 spending plan. And so in general, when you get, the tighter you get in managing your special revenue funds, the more that your spending will align with the year in which, the fiscal year in which your spending plan, it correlates with your operating budget fiscal year. So nothing much more to say here. Anything that's in deficit, those are posting adjustments that will be cleaned up. So that tells us that something hit the grant. They'll go back, research what hit that grant in the Title II FY24, and they'll make an adjusting entry to get that posted to the proper fund. So those are just some minor accounting adjustments that need to be made there. Any questions about federal grants?
No,
Okay.
that was really helpful. Thank you.
All right, so state grants, circuit breaker is the big one. And so the revenue that's coming in, so I'm just going to walk you through. The fund balance as we entered was 2357. The approved budget was 3606,449. Our budget is in the current year is based on having a circuit breaker revenue of the 3606. The fund balance coming in is a different number. And the reason why, normally what you would see is that those two numbers looking the same, right? The amount of money we received in the prior year, we've talked about this, is the amount of money that we allocate in the budget. The reason why it's different is because a receipt, the last payment we received from the state occurred after the fiscal year ended. And so it's one payment off on the fund balance. So the fund balance is as of the 30th of June. And so the final circuit breaker revenue was received in July. So that's why the two numbers don't align. We've talked about this a little bit, but maybe helpful to restate that. So revenue we've received to date. So this revenue number then includes a receipt from the prior year, right? The one that's missing, as well as all of the revenue for this year, except for, I think, the final payment. So in the end, we should be getting about $4.2 million worth of new revenue from circuit breaker. And that is what we based our FY26 number on. Now, one thing I will say and remind you is that we're taking 2 million, we're balancing our budget in FY26 using $2 million worth of revenue that would have otherwise been allocated to support our FY27 expenses. So that's where our structural deficit component is kind of resting. So we have some work to do there to further address the structural deficit, because there's not, we're putting a big hole in our FY27 operating budget as a result of the having to make that decision recently. Okay, so under Metco, again, all of these look to be tracking pretty closely to where I would see it. I don't see anything big here to flag for you. Again, there's something that got posted in the civics and teaching and learning FY24 that needs to be moved out. These are minor accounting adjustments. And so the finance team will be doing that work in the next week or so. Any questions on state grants? Okay. Private grants, again, nothing really new or surprising here. One thing that I do see is that the Metco grant that you recently accepted for the REI for $15,000, that should be up under the state, not private, but I'll fix that for an upcoming report. I think we just approved that a couple of weeks ago, right? Or last month.
Last
Yeah,
month.
last month, yeah. So nothing really newsworthy here.
Susan, I ask this every single quarterly report, I think. What do we do about these old programs that have had balances for many years? Like, some of these ones here, are they gonna be spent down so that they can be closed out? Yes, like the BU Saudi teachers, which has been there, I think, with that same balance for as long as I've been on the committee.
I had started to do some work in the winter back in December when this deficit presented itself to identify any of these resources we could use to, perhaps close the gap. In order for me to be able to know how we can spend it, I have to go back to when it was originally accepted by the committee and what the terms of the grant were. And I ran short of time on being able to track down when the grants were accepted and the backup documentation to support that. So that's really the work that needs to be done, where these were smaller amounts for the time being. And there was, other work that had to be done. I didn't have the opportunity to continue with my research there. But that would be the process in order to be able to identify one of two things would happen. Either it's broad enough that we can use it for something, in our current spending plan, or it's so restricted that we would have to return the money back to the donor.
Yeah.
So won't know that until I can get the original documents for each of these.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Carolyn?
Thanks. Just quickly while we're here, as a general education for me. So steps, BEF, and the innovation fund, although I don't know if the teacher mentoring is separate. Those are 501c3s. They're not part of the public schools of Brookline, as I understand it. So how come this, and I don't want to take too much time, but I'm just curious why this is shown sort of these amounts flow through PSB in some way.
Primarily, these are grants that are awarded to us from those foundations. And when these were set up, they were set up using the name of the various foundations. So it's not money
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so when BEF I should know this because I was on the board. When BEF makes its grants, it flows through us because the teachers need to be paid by PSB.
Yeah, if it's a mini grant, I think the mini grants are managed through BEF, but other things like bigger grants, I know, and Jody can speak probably in a more granular level than I can on it. But for example, there was a big grant that was awarded for a number of projects that were district-wide projects. So for those grants, they would send us money, and then we would pay that the expenses out of that directly. So BEF is a little odd in the way that, I mean, they do it in two ways. It's not odd. It's perfectly fine what they're doing. It's just they do it in two different ways depending on what kind of a donation it is.
So I can speak to your question, Carolyn, about steps to success. There's two sides of steps to success. There's the PSB side, which this grant would flow through, and then there's the Steps Inc. side, and we have a memorandum of understanding with them. So that's why you see this flowing through here.
So we're paying some of the tutors.
Correct. We're paying for the first hour of after school as well as some of the in-school support.
Okay. And then they have a whole section that they just do directly for like whatever reason. At some point, I guess it just got set up that way.
Yeah, that's how it functions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, other questions on any of this? Is the Odyssey grant, I'm trying to remember, that's the one that was like a teacher who had applied for something relating to the ocean? Okay, from NOAA or whatever it was? Okay,
That was recent too.
yes, also this year. Okay. Thank you, Susan. Very helpful, and we'll look for the updated memo next week that ties all the.
Yeah, on the non-salary side. And then the last one are just your revolving funds.
Oh, yes, revolving funds. Thank you. And I had a question on revolving funds, so I'm glad you. I'll
So,
hold my question. Go ahead.
yeah, so revolving funds are really funds that are set up. They can only be set up, there's only certain revolving funds school districts can have. And the law dictates what we can set up a revolving fund for. And so food service is probably your most common, and they're all fee-based programs. So the revolving fund for food service can only be used for food service expenses. The revolving fund for BEEP can only be used for early childhood expenses. Base only for base, adult education expenses. So it's really important to understand that revolving funds are for a particular purpose, and we cannot expense things that are not related to that purpose against it. So for food service, in other words, you cannot charge textbooks to it. You cannot charge curriculum to it. You can't charge anything but costs associated with food service. And that's true for each of these. So I just wanted to, highlight that. The difference, they're different. They are special revenue funds, but they have kind of different properties. The other thing about a revolving fund is that they remain open. So they function more kind of on a cash basis as opposed to like an accrual basis of accounting. So when you're reporting them, they have a fund balance, but they never close, right? Like so revolving funds revolve, right? They go year over year until the purpose is no longer in existence, and then you can sunset them. You don't have to keep them forever if there's no need for them moving forward. So that is really the difference between revolving funds and grants.
Can I ask my questions?
Sure.
Okay. My first one is why the food services zero waste is here, because that was a gift.
I was just looking at that too. And the gift accounts should actually, we should separate this and have a separate section for gift accounts.
Okay. For
'Cause-
multi-year gift accounts or something like that.
Yeah, we should have revolving. I don't know. It's like this was set up as a catch-all. This is the way it was set up when I
Yeah.
came on board. But yeah, they are not revolving funds. They're restricted funds, and maybe whoever set it up originally, there's different categories of funds, and they are restricted, but they are not revolving. And moving forward, we should separate those out for sure. So everything beneath visual arts material fees should be in a different category. And we
Okay.
can, of course, correct on that.
Even the ELE summer fee program?
I don't know what the English
Okay.
language, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
Jody, do you
But
know?
the food services one is definitely was a gift, we're in year 2 of what I understand is intended to be a 3-year gift. So it definitely seems like it should be on the gifts part of things.
It's yeah, if it's called gift, it also could have been a donation. And I think when we have brought it forward, it seemed more like a donation. Don and I were having a conversation about this earlier this week about how some of these we'll say gifts and donations and grants and the titling of them doesn't necessarily align with what their properties are from an accounting perspective. So there's things that come through that say grant, but they're really not a grant according to the definition of what we would call a grant.
Right.
And so that's one of the things we were talking about earlier this week, is like really taking a look at some of these and kind of really categorizing them, not according to what the language is used when we receive them, but in fact, based on the properties associated with the type of fund it is. But that's more work to be done there. But yeah, we did see some of these and say, I don't know, this this shouldn't really be in a grant, or this shouldn't be in revolving, but we'll continue to refine what we're doing and until we get it just right.
And does this mean that there was no money left over in year one of the food services zero waste? Did they spend it down perfectly? Given it has the dash there?
That is what I would say. Yep.
Okay. Is it possible to get that like confirmed?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions from the subcommittee or other people?
I was wondering, is BACE going to deficit this year? Is that, could we go back and look at that?
What, I'm sorry. Base,
Yeah, is base going into deficit this year? Is that something that's about to happen?
I met with Michelle on Monday, and we are still working through what their expenses are going to be between now and the end of the year. And also putting together a budget for just the summer component, and we haven't completed that work yet. I can give you an update next week. Oh, and or next, in our June meeting on how base is looking. Did not finish the work with Michelle in time for this report.
My other question in addition, so it's my questions about the big three, and Sarah asked about one of them. So, food services, I'm presuming that the revenue that's posted is just because it's lagging in terms of reimbursement from the state. Are you still anticipating we'll end up at 3.8 million roughly in revenue for food services?
I can see how we're tracking, which is a good point. One of the things that's challenging and has been challenging up until now is the lag in the posting of receipts throughout the year. I will say the good news is that any receipts that were received by the Treasury by the end of April are included in this, but we still have, May and June receipts to come in. And the other thing with food service, of course, it's kind of a year-round program now, so we will be getting in more receipts. But I can ask Sasha to provide me with more information about how she thinks they would close out as of June 30th.
Okay, and then
So I can do base. I might not be able to get all this done by Monday, though, so maybe I'll do base and the revolving fund analysis information for the June meeting. So base, food service, what was the other one?
well, the third one is BEEP. I mean, if you look, the budget for BEEP was 4.5, but there's less than half of that for the revenue. So where's the rest of the BEEP revenue?
I think some of this again comes to timing, but I will focus in on those three revolving funds and get you more information.
Okay. Other questions from the subcommittee or other members on the other people on the,
On this topic?
on this topic? Before we move on to the next topic. Okay. Thank you, Susan, and we'll look for those updates both next week and in June. And the next topic on the agenda is the hourly rates and stipends for extra compensation. Susan, are you gonna talk us
Yeah,
through?
sure. So last year, the school committee approved these rates for the current year, and we are asking that the same rates be approved for the upcoming year. There's no changes in what the school committee approved back in June of 2024. But right now, without rates, we can't issue contracts and move forward with scheduling the summer programming. So I know and will acknowledge that there's a variety of different questions that people have about equity and where did the rates come from and all of that. We were hoping to be able to get to that work this year, but we were not able um, to get there. So we can certainly do some more work in the upcoming year to try to better understand, you know, the programs as well as the costs and enrollment information and then rates of pay that go along with them.
I totally appreciate not having time to get to that. I think that the thing that we're going to need to look at is the hours that somebody needs to spend outside of the day in order to prepare. So like, is the role a curriculum writing role? That seems to me to be a different, workload than a supervising role, right? I don't know if maybe it's going to take talking to people that are in those programs in order to figure that part of it out.
Yeah, I know that what I can say is that when I go back through some of the records, that non-aligned pay was analyzed back in 21 and 22. And Joe Russo, who I believe was your HR director, and Jim Marini was the superintendent at the time. And the memo from that era says that they had done some, comp work with similar school districts. I haven't seen the comp information, but what I do have is their memo. And so the rates.
And that's what you had shared with us last time, I believe, right? And that's how we felt comfortable voting those in. Like we felt like we had been advised well. And so we felt comfortable with voting those in. But I also appreciate that you're saying, let's take a deeper dive at this. I understand that there wasn't time this time, but I think that what we'll be looking at is, who writes curriculum for their programs, I think we could figure out the questions we want to ask. And those questions probably would be to people who are involved in those programs.
Yeah, and in order to be able to do the work, it's really the three deputies need to be able to have the time together to do those assessments. My concern for next year, of course, is I'm the only deputy left, so I don't know that I'll be able to spend a significant amount of my time next year with the override, 6 contract negotiations, and all of the changes to be able to focus my attention on this. But it's here. We are, I believe you're competitive. I know that Karen Schmuckler had taken a quick look at some of the districts around us, and for at least the ESY, she told me earlier today that we're the second to the top in terms of what we pay for the ESY component. Of course, not every school district has the same programs that we have, so knowing what they pay in some areas might be more difficult to map out, but certainly there should be a relationship between the amount of time and effort outside of the school and area and responsibility and the pay, without question. It's just getting to the bottom of that and having the time to have those conversations with folks in the field doing the work. It has been the struggle.
Carolyn, go ahead, and then I've got a question after you.
Thanks. So I'm looking at a recent email we received from a community member articulating some of the concerns that you articulated, Susan, and my question is not remotely critical of you or your work or your efforts. It's literal questions, just to be clear. So Star Academy is completely funded by the METCO grant, is that correct?
Not entirely. A piece of it is the METCO grant, and then it's Title IV. Is it Title IV, Jody, that pays for the staff? Title III, sorry.
Okay, and so question in there, when I see TBD for the assistant director and the team leader, like maybe normally I wouldn't have a huge concern about that, but sort of looking at that also through the lens of the valid concern that's been raised about the parity between, I mean, I'm looking at the ESY, I'm assuming coordinator is basically like a director position, and the difference between 12,500 and 18,000, and then with those TBDs, can you speak to those TBDs at all? And also, I guess I just want to acknowledge, even though I appreciate that you want to try to sort of dig back and see where these rates came from. It's tricky because I think that the issues raised are fair issues of concern.
So two things I'll say. I don't have tonight what those two were last summer, but I can get that for you. I remember now that you mentioned this, and if I would have been, if it had occurred to me, I would have updated this. But I remember last year, the reason why assistant director and team leader were not moved forward with an amount was because there was some work done to look at the differences in responsibility associated with them, and that at the moment that we had brought this forward, there that work had not been completed. But I believe, and Jody can probably answer this better than I, that the assistant director and the team leader were hired last year. And I can look up what they were hired at, and then we can give you the information on that, because it wouldn't be any different from what we charged this year. Jody, do you remember if they had both a team leader and
They did have both last year.
okay, do you have any recollection of what they landed on for the
I don't.
yeah, we can look it up though. We can get that. I can get that next week with the amount.
Okay,
that-
so
yeah.
maybe a different way of asking it is, do you, so like if those positions, like if a team leader was the same or more as the ESY coordinator, that's just concerning. And I'm gonna just throw in another question. So the aides, what is the Paris salary?
It's in the Unit B contract. So
Okay, do you
yeah,
know
so
it
it's
off
what
the top of your head?
well, there's a range, right? There's different steps. So if an employee in the, during the year is at step 5 and they're on grade 2, then that's what they would be receiving. So it's pairs with the Unit C contract.
So
One
at
thing,
least
I want to say though, because there is a distinction, like in the ESY programs, you see coordinators, but they are coordinators because we have 4 directors that work year round. So the coordinators are not the equivalent of a director. In the STAR program, it's a director, because there isn't a director that's running this in the summer that parallels what they do during the year. So those are 2 different scenarios. And
understood.
I just want to call that out. So you're not going to have a coordinator make the same as a director, because there's directors for ESY. There's 4 directors that work all summer long. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
I don't see them as parallel.
Is the,
So they're
Okay.
parallel,
What?
is the time commitment?
not parallel.
And so that makes sense what you're saying, Susan. Thanks for that explanation. Is the time commitment, which I think Sarah was raising, like, I guess generally speaking, I guess I share the, concern in terms of retaining best people and best practice that, if a team leader or assistant director in Star Academy is making the same as an ESY coordinator, even if that's a similar position, is the time the same? So,
Exactly.
you're saying, Susan, that you're not gonna,
I don't
this
have
is
for you.
work that's
That
tricky.
was Yeah, that's it, because like Star Academy is not an ESY program. The ESY is run out of OSS. And Star Academy and Discovery are out of OTL. And I think these programs were probably developed not in tandem, but over time. And
Understood.
you know, and so I don't know what the through line between all the programs are, and that just is going to take some time for those three offices to kind of sit down and look at. And of course, next year we don't have two of those offices filled, so we're probably going to have to wait a little bit longer before we can get to that work. But at least maybe pockets of the work can be done in the meantime, depending on how quickly we're able to fill some of those positions. But I don't have the information. I haven't had any time to take any deep dive look at it myself.
So I'm a little confused about some of the comments about ESY coordinators versus directors, because as my understanding is, the ESY coordinators are essentially site directors of each one of the 3 ESY sites. And they're not, you're right, they're not the special education directors, but they're there to make sure that the ESY program at each one of those sites runs as it's supposed to. And then the director of project of Star Academy, just to give one example, has during the year to develop the program. They are both the director of they have their job during the year as a director, and then they also have this job during the summer. So I guess I think that they are more parallel in my mind. The person who's on the ground executing for both of these programs, they're essentially equivalents. They're oversee like managing and executing what's happening. So I guess I don't understand the saying that they are not parallel when I'm saying I think that their functions essentially are. With that said, the Star Academy director role seems out of line with the rest of the roles. It's not that that one is much higher by almost 50% than any of the other positions. One thing that I would like to get clarity on, 2 questions I have. One is for all of the stipended roles, I guess for all of these roles, is anyone getting paid for their normal role and then again getting paid for this? Like if I'm whoever, one of these, whether I'm a nurse or I'm a director or I'm a whatever, am I getting paid my normal hourly rate or daily rate and also claiming a stipend on top of that if I'm working, you know, July 17th, whatever that is, a Tuesday? Is it part of my regular contract and I'm getting stipended, or is it I wouldn't have gotten paid if this wasn't happening?
I don't know how to really answer that question off the top of my head without having further conversation with people that oversee those programs.
I can help a little bit, Mariah. For example, Mindy is the Star Academy director, and she's also our ELE director during the year. But her contract isn't a full school year contract, so she's not double dipping. She's getting paid for summer work that she normally wouldn't be doing. I apologize.
Okay, so in general, it's true that people are not getting double paid, as far as we know.
As far as I'm aware.
Okay. Lisa, I see your hand is up. Do you want to, or Liza, do you want to comment specifically on this question? I would presume so. So Betsy, do you mind promoting her so that she can comment specifically on this?
Lisa, you should be able to speak now.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I can't turn my camera on. I'm Liza Casal. I've worked in ESY for 5 years. I've been the coordinator for 3. So if there's any questions that anybody would like to ask, I'm here. This meeting is so important to me that I'm here. So
Thank you. Well, that's my one question. It sounds like, as I would just like, maybe Susan, could we put in something that's like an asterisk of people can't get double paid? If that makes sense, or can we not do something like that?
Yeah, I don't, if Jody believes that nobody's getting double paid, she would be closer to it. I just don't have any.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's happening or it's not happening. I can't answer the question from a place of knowing.
Okay. And then my second question is, the PSB special education teachers and specialists, it lists a whole bunch of areas, but it doesn't necessarily, like, I just rereading it this year, it doesn't list like BCBAs. And I guess I'm just wondering, what is the point of listing the ones that are here? Can we just say it's special education teachers and specialists? And either add in the ones that are missing or just remove all of the things that are listed there?
I don't know why they were listed. I don't know what I wouldn't eliminate, I wouldn't make changes right this second without me being able to do some research. And at this particular point, I'm really concerned about our inability to secure the staff for summer programs.
Okay,
So,
and then on that point, my third question is, do we have any areas last year where these rates were insufficient to secure staff?
no,
Can you repeat that?
no.
No, okay. Okay. Carolyn, I see your hand. Liza, I presume that's an old hand, so if it's a new hand, take it down and then put it back up again so I know. Okay. Carolyn, go ahead.
Thanks. So again, I feel like I'm between a rock and a hard place here because I take the concerns, and it's not the first time we've heard these concerns, or even I've heard these concerns even before I was on school committee about the ESY program. I appreciate Liza being here. Susan, I mean, or Mariah, is there a way to just come up with $5,500 to, but it's 3 times. I mean, is there a 15-ish $1,000 if one was to move to make the ESY coordinator positions on par with the STAR director?
Well, I think the issue that we had last year is, and what didn't happen this year, is we basically said some of these days are half days, some of them are full days. We don't know how much, like, we know that some of these directors have to do prep, so what does their work day look like? How many weeks is it? And could we come up with a reasonable hourly rate that then reflected some of these programs? Again, I'm making this up, being 3 weeks versus 6 weeks, being half days versus full days, so that we would have a much more nuanced, accurate reflection of the workload that goes into being a director or coordinator or whatever. And that's, I think, the kind of thing that we didn't get yet that we would find valuable.
Okay, so yes, that would be valuable. And I think I just heard Susan say that although of course we want, well, she didn't say this, I'll say, of course we want to settle this. But it's frustrating. I think we're probably all frustrated for it to be a sort of ongoing point of contention and frustration. And like, is there something that Liza, is there a proposal that somebody can produce within the next 2 weeks that could give us some guidance to consider?
These rates on the ESY were raised significantly last time. That's what I can tell you. I can, the rates that we're paying were increased in this area. So it's not that it was level.
Yeah, the hourly and the coordinators.
Yes.
The hourly, I don't think was, I think we changed the internal PSB to per diem. They had a lower hourly rate than externals, if I recall.
They did, but they were increased also in the year in which you did not vote for these. So they have gone up. Not last year. Last year, what went up were the coordinators, and I think all teachers in ESY were moved
No, we
from
changed them to
hourly
per diems. That's what increased them last year, right?
for the teachers. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, Yes, exactly.
That wasn't, they were hourly before. 2 years ago, they were hourly. They were changed the year before, and last year you codified that you would give this raise, this amount moving forward, so. I'm just saying ESY is an area that has had some modifications, pretty significant modifications. Star Academy has not had a complete overhaul, I don't think, and some of the other programs, but uh, you know,
I think, Carolyn, the other concern
until
is that
I
they
don't
need
know
to
what.
be able to make offers to people. They need to be able to lock people into the position. So I don't think we want to wait 2 weeks. I think let's go ahead and have Sarah make her comment, or yeah, let me have Sarah comment, then we'll come back to you, Liza. And then hopefully we can make a motion at that point.
I just wanted to make sure that in our notes, we have what you addressed. So just to be very succinct about it so that we can all look back to it. We're looking at number of hours worked. We're looking at outside demand, and we're looking at curriculum writing versus not curriculum writing. Is that the full list of how we would like to define these roles? I'm not
I'm not
asking Susan, I'm
distinguishing
asking,
curriculum writing versus, there can be many ways they're spending their time. I was just saying
right,
hours worked on.
outside,
Yes.
okay, outside work, like demand beyond the hours of the day. That's
Correct.
one thing,
Yeah.
right? And then hours worked. So if you tie it to an hourly, then you're all set there.
Yeah.
Are we asking for a different rate of pay for a different level of expertise or education? I don't think we're going there. Just wanted to make sure we had our complete list of what it is that we would like to look into.
Mhm.
And that, if we have that then in our notes from this meeting, that helps us going forward. I don't know if there's going to be multiple times that Susan is going to say to us, Susan, I don't want to talk about you in the third person. You know that I have a lot of respect for you, but she's going to say to us that these are things that can't get done without people in these roles. So do we want to try to also keep either a mental list or a separate list of things that we would like to flag once we do have people in these roles? Like, do you want to start keeping a list of what hasn't been addressed?
I don't understand the question.
Do we want, like, is this going to come up again and again because we don't have people in the leadership roles, that there's going to be things that we're not getting to, that we have to make hard decisions like we have to make today? And do we want to have it flagged somewhere else other than just in our notes of things that we haven't gotten to?
Susan has a running list on her whiteboard.
Okay, good.
My parking lot.
Yeah, she calls it the parking
Good.
lot. Yeah.
So we have the parking, that's a teacher term. Good thing
Yeah.
we've got the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liza, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving me time to speak. I just want to say the raise we got last year, I wrote letters to the school committee and Mariah was the one who heard me. Thank you, Mariah. We got a raise last year because you added an extra week to ESY. We are now working 6 weeks. And this is very emotional for me because I love this program. I have dedicated most of the past 5 years to this program. Our job starts in February. We are not getting double paid. I work weekends after weekend, as do the other 2 coordinators. Once summer school starts, every year I have to fight not only for my employees to get paid, but for them to get equal amount of money. I am getting asked by people, I have 6 degrees. I am getting asked by people why I continue to work for this program every year when it seems that nobody but Mariah cares about our students, our most vulnerable students, and everything that we do every year. I promise you, I can staff an entire ESY program. But do you guys want staff of employees that work with our most vulnerable students all year long? Or do you want me to hire somebody that applies? Because I would like a staff of my teachers that are willing to work, that know my students, that know their needs, that know what sets off our most vulnerable students or what supports them to have success so that they don't have regression over the summer. And that has not been acknowledged or honored at all over the past 5 years that I have been in this program. There are coordinators that work programs that are half the amount of time, that are optional programs for almost over $10,000 than what the coordinators make. Now, I know there's 3 of us, but we give our heart and soul into this program. and it is for over 20% of our most vulnerable population. I'm not even, my employees make more money than I do on a summer basis. If you paid me my hourly rate, I would begin to maybe meet what my employees make, but that doesn't even compute the amount of hours that we spend on making an awesome summer program work for our most vulnerable students. And I just hope that the school committee and anybody hearing this considers that, because it's really hard to fight every year for my employees to get a paycheck or to get paid. I saw us through the deficit when we didn't get paid, and coordinators saw zero amount of that money. And Erin Herney and I still come back every year because we are dedicated to our students and to what they need to prevent regression and have the summer that they need. And I just hope that people on this phone call or hearing this consider it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Liza. So we have 3 minutes left in the meeting. Scheduled, as scheduled. I do think we need to make a vote on this. I think it is notable to me, the point that was just made about, you know, other people are making per diem and these staff aren't. If it is a 6-week appointment, that's about $2,000 a week.
Sorry, Mariah, can you just? I listened to every word Liza just said, but you just sort of translated something or restated something, and I'm not, can you, when you're saying, who are the the A and the B here and what you?
So if you look for ESY, every other role gets paid per diem from our current staff. So you can see per diem, PSB aides is the para salary schedule. Everyone is basically making their current salary except for the coordinators. And the 12,500 is a flat rate. And if they're working 6 weeks at 5 days, that's again a $2,000 rate. I don't know how that compares to their hourly rate or their daily rate.
Okay, so you are expanding on what Liza just said, that her teachers are making more than she does.
It's what she said, right? Exactly. I don't know that we have the information to do the math like right now and understand the impact of that, but I was interpreting it in that way, is, you know, are other people in the same way that we had a conversation about salary bands with vice principals and principals, and thinking about how to make sure that people aren't making that people are making an amount that makes it both worth their leadership role in that extra organization to do these things. So how do we make sure that people aren't making less on an hourly basis or a daily basis than the folks that they're overseeing in that role?
Understood.
Maybe we could answer that question in the upcoming year. I think one of the bigger differences at this moment is just that these rates were used to build the FY26 budget. So if we're going to start to increase rates, then we don't have, you know, we have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't have funding behind it. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. And so I think if there's a few targeted areas you want to look at, maybe that is doable. Maybe it just isn't doable right this second.
Do we need to, Susan, if we voted the rest of this, except for the ESY coordinator role, bear with me here. And
I'm
then,
thinking the exact same thing.
and then that way it would allow you to make the rest of the offers. This is only 3 positions we're talking about. And as far as I know, they're people who are recurring roles. And then that would let us do a very targeted, just sort of inquiry into just that position and some looking at the impact. Is that possible?
Not from my perspective. I don't have the capacity, and I don't think Karen or anybody else does right now. We have so much that has to be done right now. I don't know what to say.
Okay.
I can do this, but that means other things will have to go.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
probably someone else could do the math and just have you validate it and it would be okay. And I know you're making a face, but I think that like
I'm saying no. I'm saying no from my perspective. You can take, and you do take actions that don't follow,
Okay,
my recommendations, but I'm just saying, we don't have capacity. We have 6 weeks left to go. We're
Okay.
trying to, yeah.
I'm gonna make the motion to approve all of the document except for that one row, and we will come back to that in the very near future.
I'll second that.
Okay, Carolyn, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And I should say that the motion was to recommend to full school committee that they accept the entire document, less that one line. And we'll take this up tomorrow.
It might be helpful next time we speak about this to have anything else that's defined. Like, do we have stipends defined for during the year work? Do we, where
Well,
do
like,
we
let's
already
not,
have?
let's park that for a little bit
Okay.
and see what we can, how we can streamline this. I want to make one friendly amendment to my motion, which is to add BCBAs, which is the one other category of provider, into that special education list. If they work, that's why.
Of things that we're waiting to approve.
No, that there was a whole category of special education and it listed OT and speech and a whole bunch of other stuff,
Okay.
but for whatever reason, BCBA wasn't there.
You're gonna add that to it. Yep,
Yeah,
I
just
understand
put
now. Yep.
BCBA in, yep.
So
into
do I
the
have
amendment.
have
I'm making
to
a
second
friendly
your?
amendment. If you both
Okay.
are okay with that, then we will just pursue, like, if you don't like it, then speak up now. Otherwise, we'll
yeah.
include that small
I'm
amendment.
good with that.
Okay. Okay. That is where we are going to end the meeting. Susan, thank you so much. Betsy, Jody, everyone else from staff who's here, thank you very much. And we will be back tomorrow for school committee, and Betsy is going to pull the membership on a quick meeting next week to cover the little bits that we did not get to today.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Good night.